TSN delivers another attack on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Once again, the channel's assault looks ridiculous, aggressive, and extremely unprofessional. This time, TV host Ала Мазур and others of that ilk accused his beatitude Onуфрија of working for the Kremlin and Serbia, as well as countering NATO.
Просто на очах усього світу Кремль провів блискавичну спецоперацію. Але найдивніше, одну із головних ролей у цьому церковно-політичному детективі, який експерти називають троянським конем для НАТО, зіграли українські попи із московського патріархату.
It all looks like a funny prank, but the 1+1 journalists are extremely serious. For more than 10 minutes, they convinced the audience that the enthronement of the new head of the Montenegrin literal metropolitanate, a purely internal event of church life, is in fact Moscow's sabotage against Montenegro, which the Kremlin committed with the hands of Ukrainian hierarchs.
Сербська Православна Церква, підтримана російською з її українським філіалом, вирішує ввести на посаду нового чорногорського митрополита. Кремль бере на себе роль стратегічного партнера сербської церкви і визначає кризовим менеджером українського панотця московського патріархату.
Let's take a look at the situation in Montenegro and the claims from TSN channel. On September the 5th, 2021, the enthronement of the new head of the Montenegrin literal metropolis of the Serbian church, Њене, took place in the Cetinje monastery. It is here that the enthronements of the Montenegrin literal metropolitans have traditionally been taking place for several centuries. As we know, the enthronement of a new primate is an exclusively ecclesiastical and exclusively peaceful event. But this time it did not work in a peaceful way, but not at all at the fault of the church. Several dozen or even hundreds of radicals organized by President Đukanović in protest against the enthronement of Metropolitan Њeне staged pogroms and riots. They attacked law enforcement officers, burned fires and set fire to tires. Among the activists were the leaders of the Montenegrin schismatics, Mihail Dedeić and Bojan Bojović, for concelebrating, with whom Sergei Dumenko in 2019 apologized to the former Metropolitan Amfilochios of Montenegro and the literal. The activists blocked the road from Podgorica to Cetinje with barricades and completely blocked the city. As a result, the hierarchs of the church were forced to travel to the enthronement in Cetinje by helicopter. Please note that Patriarch Porphyria and Metropolitan Њeне leave the helicopter and return to it under the cover of an anti-sniper shield. It's unlikely that law enforcement officers would use it without a reason, hence there was a real threat of murder. The TSN journalists themselves used the expression anti-terrorist enthronement. Even OKU spokesman Eustrati Zora speaks of the threat of a terrorist act.
Це був контртерористичний захід.
However, in the eyes of TSN, the people who attempted the life of the bishops are not terrorists at all, but simply concerned citizens who are labeled as extremists by Russian propaganda.
Чорногорські громадяни, яких Роспропаганда клеймує екстремістами, барикадують в'їзди до міста. Починаються серйозні сутички.
Well, if Russia refers to someone as extremists, then these people are virtually heroes for TSN. So, according to Mazur, civilized society was astonished by the shots with the helicopter, but not because bishops may be in danger of murder in the modern world, but because their lives are protected by special forces.
Ці кадри, де церковники летять армійським вертольотом, а потім ховаються за спецзагоном, приголомшили цивілізований світ. Чому православним отцям знадобилася підтримка автоматників?
What an interesting question from Ала Мазур. We will answer it. Usually, special forces are involved when there is a real threat to human life. But it seems that for TSN, to protect one's life is almost a shame. Journalists scoff that due to the threat of a terrorist attack, enthronement did not take place as solemnly as it should have.
Нового митрополита помазують під прикриттям автоматників. Утім, куратор задоволений.
In general, TSN people are loyal to themselves. They perceive activists who organized riots and threatened the lives of bishops as heroes, while their potential victims are cowards and scoundrels. Anyway, let us return to the bishops of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. At the very beginning of the program, the authors significantly demonstrate the arrival of the UOC delegation in Montenegro and present it almost like a visit of saboteurs.
Цей цивільний літак, що летить з неба України на землю Чорногорії, доправляє дуже важливих пасажирів. Парочка щойно прибулих – це нагороджені путінськими відзнаками дружби топ-менеджери Української Православної Церкви Московського Патріархату. Керуючи її справами митрополит Антоній та митрополит Тернопільський і Кременецький Сергій.
The author highlights two words pronounced by Metropolitan Sergei, puffing them up into a whole conspiracy theory.
Каже слова. Про яку саме побєду йдеться, і оратори цієї побєди можуть мати українську прописку.
As we managed to find out from the participants in the meeting, it was about the resurrection of the Savior. Just as Christ gained the victory over death, the Church will triumph in spiritual warfare, and the gates of hell will not prevail against her. What did the TSN mean? Apparently, the victory in the enthronement in Satinie. But when the hierarchs of the UOC were invited to Montenegro, there was no need to talk about victory, since there had been no pogroms from the activists. What is the logic of TSN then? Do they really think that it was the hierarchs of the UOC who first organized the riots of Djukanovich's supporters and then ensured victory over them?
Все сталося, як і обіцяв митрополит Тернопільський і Кременецький Сергій напередодні главі Сербської церкви у Чорногорії.
For any normal person, this sounds ridiculous, but the hints that this visit of the UOC hierarchs and the visit of His Beatitude Onufrī in 2020 are a kind of spy special operation of the Kremlin against the Montenegrin statehood sounds even more ridiculous.
Визначає кризовим менеджером українського панотця Московського Патріархату.
Фактично куратором від Московського Патріархату ситуації в Чорногорії був призначений Онуфрій. І він навіть туди виїжджав і приймав участь в деяких заходах.
What can be said in this regard? Is the visit of a bishop to another country a sign of his collaboration with the special services? Let us remember that the church in Montenegro and the church in Ukraine are one and the same Church of Christ, which are just located in different territories. It's a known fact that in neighboring villages, priests and parishioners very often come to visit each other on church holidays. Does this mean they want to seize power in this village? No, they just visit their brothers and sisters and participate in the general worship. Likewise, hierarchs and priests of one church visit hierarchs of another church, participate in joint services, processions of the cross, share the joy of holidays or ordinations of new bishops. It can be recalled that delegations from all local churches, including Constantinople, came to the enthronement of His Beatitude Onufrī. Does this mean that TSN considers the Fanariots to be the Turkish president's saboteurs working against the Ukrainian state? It sounds downright ridiculous, but unfortunately, the central Ukrainian media with top-ranking TSN channel from year to year are engaged in outright anti-church propaganda at the most primitive level. Over the years, the composition of these propagandists has changed. Some journalists were forced to change their image, but they did not change their rhetoric, which is disappointing. Anyway, we know that God cannot be mocked, nor will He let His church be subject to mockery. People in Montenegro and in Ukraine publicly declare their support for their faith, their church. They declare it because the church for them is not political squabbles, but the road to eternity. True, there are forces that are annoyed both in Montenegro and in Ukraine. But can their slander harm us? Let us hear what His Beatitude Onufrī says on this matter.
Вони хочуть, щоб ми забули про вічність, щоб ми лишили це питання, щоб ми займалися цими земними, політичними, вічними склоками, які не мають кінця і краю, які завжди має кінець такий безславний. В політиці сьогодні осана, завтра розпней. Люди хочуть, щоб церква мінялася так, як політичні течії. А церква не може мінятися, тому що правда Божа незмінна. Христос сказав, що в цьому світі тих, хто захоче йти за ним, будуть гнати, ненавидіти, проклинати. Так що це наша дорога, дорога церкви. Земна церква називається церква воїнствуючою. І, тобто вона протистоїть злу. А якщо протистоїть злу, то зло на неї ополчається. І церква ця ніколи з цієї дороги не зійде. І я хочу бути в цій церкві. Я не хочу відпадати від цієї церкви. І теж сповідати те, що сповідує церква. Любити людей, робити добро людям. А що вони скажуть про мене за це? Це Бог їм суддя.